So we'll continue talking about government tools as a determinant of supply, how the government influences supply. So we talked about subsidies, and then another one is excise tax, also known sometimes as a sin tax. So the government has certain taxes that are required on a certain good. So in Minnesota, for example, we have a gas tax that goes to pay for our roads, our infrastructure, and it's only, the users that are paying that gas tax. So when I go fill up at the pump and it says 192 a gallon, there's not additional tax on top of that. The tax is already built in for gasoline. But like for tobacco in Minnesota, you can see we have a $3.04 tax on tobacco. So it's called an excise tax. Ours, this is back from 2017, but we're number 7 in the nation with one of the higher taxes. You can see New York is number 1. And I remember I was working at a gas station 20 miles from the North Dakota border when Minnesota increased their excise tax. And so you'd get people that were coming from North Dakota to go to like Lakes Country on the weekends. It was in the summertime. And they'd stop at the gas station to buy their tobacco products, and they were shocked at our prices, and annoyed, thinking that it was our gas station's price that was so high. And so I would have to explain to them that no, Minnesota, the legislature, they changed their law, and so this is what our tax is. And you maybe remember Mr. Nelson talking about in Canada how they have some really high excise taxes as well. So of course the government can influence supply with taxes. And then I also have a clip that I would love for you guys to watch. It's funny too, on Stephen Colbert, the Colbert Report, which isn't on anymore, but about another way that the government influenced supply with sugar. So please watch that. Another impactor of supply is technology. Technology better shift a supply curve to the right, because the point of technology is to try to make the production process, more efficient, obviously faster, better, all of those things. We know that when technology doesn't work, then it can shift supply to the left. But here's the example is as Lund Boats gets these new robotic machines, which they have, the process of producing boats should shift the supply to the right. It better make it faster. So technology always shifts supply to the right as long as it's working. The next one is a little difficult to understand. So this is a tendency, is competition tends to increase supply. When we have a lack of competition, it tends to decrease supply, but of course there are exceptions. The reason that it's a tendency to increase supply is we're competitive by nature. So if we know that there's a business that's going to compete with ours or a supplier that's going to compete with us, we're going to work a little bit harder. We're going to try to go make, more sales or whatever it is. Now, again, there are those exceptions where a business comes in, a new one, and the old one maybe can't adjust and doesn't adjust, and then all of a sudden they start to lose their business. But again, it should shift supply to the right. I'm going to post an amazing video that I made about my first iPod and how Apple, when they released the first MP3 player, how that actually is going to shift supply to the right. So watch that. Enjoy. I really hate seeing myself on camera, so it took a lot for me to make that for you. Here's an example of competition as increasing supply. You can see, like I remember growing up, this was my Burger King, this is what my McDonald's look like. Nowadays, you've noticed that most Burger Kings, most McDonald's have adjusted. They've remodeled, because if one's going to remodel, then they're both going to remodel because they're competing. They want to have the latest and the greatest design. So there's an example of competition for you. Another example is if a Cold Stone Creamery was put up to like fresh freeze in Wadena. Of course, initially Cold Stone's new, so supply will shift to the right. Fresh freeze might want to consider maybe advertising the fact that they have burgers, hot dogs, all these other food items, these other specialty items. Because if they don't, supply could shift to the left, but maybe they start offering promotions, like you buy a cone, get a free French fry, or something like that, to try to end up shifting supply to the right. The next one is price of related goods. we had this with demand. The demand for one good is connected to another